Hey there, besties. Welcome back to our channel. Today, we're continuing our recap of the manhwa, Depths of Malice. If you're new to this series, check the description below for links to previous episodes. Lastly, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe if you enjoy the video. It really helps our channel grow. Thanks for tuning in. Let's get started. Late at night, Yersha slipped into Alberhart Manor, cloaked in shadow. Inside Rita's parlor, he pulled back his hood. Right on time. I was getting peckish, Rita said with a sly grin, already seated at a table spread with wine and snacks. Impressive setup, isn't it? She gestured for him to sit. Taking a bottle, she poured wine into her glass. This bottle alone costs its weight in gold, she said, swirling the drink. I'm not partial to spirits, Yersha replied, taking a seat. Still no fun, even at your own farewell party? She teased, raising a brow. What's the matter with you? Yersha studied her expression. Did something happen? She sighed, pouring herself another drink. I suppose I can't fool a sorcerer. The Count wants to marry me off, to get rid of me, really. All for his son's sake. She shrugged it off. But enough about me. You leave for Tatum tomorrow, right? Yes. I need to slip past Marquis Carter. Prince Van Brandt has ordered my exile, Yersha said calmly. Rita's eyes widened. You're being banished, and it doesn't bother you? It's irrelevant. The moment I arrive in Tatum, I'll become an official investigator from Osland, Yersha said, clinking his glass lightly against hers. Rita smiled, though her eyes softened. My only comrade. It will be lonely without you here. Take care of yourself, Yersha advised with a quiet smile. People might throw more than just stones at a woman like you. Rita scoffed. You can't be serious. Forget it, there's no point talking sense into you. Would a gift lift your spirits? Yersha asked. A gift? Rita tilted her head curiously. He extended his hand, dropping a small object into her palm. A stamp? She asked, puzzled. It's a talisman from a rare desert tree called Siddim, Yersha explained. Oh? Will it shield me from bad luck? Or protect me? She asked, her mood brightening. It helps you find water, even in a desert, Yersha replied with a faint smile. How thoughtful, she mused. I have something for you too. She reached for a small box and handed it to him. Yersha's eyes flickered with surprise as he opened it. A farewell gift, she said softly. There's much I owe you. A gift? Yersha asked, accepting the box with a calm expression. Go on. Open it, Rita encouraged with a soft smile. Yersha carefully removed the lid, revealing a pair of finely made boots. His brows lifted in surprise. Tatum shoes? How did you manage to find these? I'm just keeping my promise, to send you back home properly, Rita said. Do you like them? Yersha's hands tightened slightly around the box, holding it closer to his chest. Thank you, Rita, he said quietly, his voice steady but warm. Leaning in, he placed a light kiss on her forehead. If you ever wish to leave this life behind, come to Tatum, Yersha offered. I'll make sure you have a place to stay. Though I have a feeling I'll regret inviting someone as troublesome as you. A faint smile played on his lips. Rita chuckled, retreating into her chair with a teasing look. If you do plan to stay in Tatum, you'll need to gather proof the Marquis is smuggling gunpowder. I know, Yersha replied, his smile lingering. Rita raised her glass. Cheers to your homecoming, then. Cheers, Yersha echoed, and their glasses clinked softly. The next morning, Rita and Blaine shared a private moment in the shaded garden over tea. The air was cool, and the soft rustling of leaves accompanied their quiet conversation. Blaine leaned in for a kiss, his touch gentle but lingering. You perverted man, Rita whispered, pushing him back with a playful smile. He chuckled softly. Your perverted lover, he corrected with a grin. How fortunate you are. We're not lovers yet, she shot back, sitting up. Perhaps that's what you think, Blaine said, brushing a lock of her hair between his fingers. But as it stands, the only person I want to call lover is you. Rita rose from the table, her gaze softening as she looked down at him. Blaine gently took her hand, his thumb brushing over the burns that marred her wrist. These scars are healing slower than I'd hoped, he said thoughtfully. Do you dislike a woman with scars? She asked quietly. I've come to see them as my medals for surviving a monster. Why would I dislike them? He murmured, lifting her wrist to his lips and kissing the scars tenderly. Even if you had 100 scars, they'd never be reason enough for me to let you go. His voice was low but sure as he looked into her eyes. Now, tell me, what would you prefer? Prefer? She echoed, a hint of confusion in her voice. Don't play coy, he said, his tone light but probing. Would you rather become the wife of a duke or a princess? Ah, so that's what he meant, she thought with a small smirk. He's a fool who admires the surface, Blaine muttered, leaning back into his chair. He doesn't see the real you. Prince Van Brandt hardly deserves you. And if he ever discovers my true nature? Blaine asked with a knowing smile. I'm well aware. I'd be prosecuted and thrown into the royal dungeons within a year, Rita replied, deep in thoughts. So ultimately, I intend to become the Countess Alberhart, Rita said, her tone steady and resolute, catching Blaine off guard. Is that so? He asked, his eyes narrowing slightly. Rita knew Blaine had his sources, but she hadn't expected him to be digging into her relationship with Van. Her gaze sharpened, a warning flickering beneath the surface. Blaine met her glare with a smile, though a hint of tension flickered in his expression. The Marquis Carter should be returning to the palace soon, Blaine remarked, smoothly shifting the topic. Have you heard something? She asked, her voice soft but curious, drawing a laugh from him. As the head of the administrative division, the Marquis makes his annual business trip to the east, Blaine explained. Why do you think that is? The east is too far for palace surveillance, Rita replied, her brow furrowing thoughtfully. So Carter travels there to oversee administrative matters personally, doesn't he? Blaine observed her quietly, his expression unreadable. Then, something clicked in Rita's mind. Is there another reason? She asked, a spark of suspicion in her voice. Blaine's smile deepened, laced with intrigue. I've heard an interesting rumor about Carter's trips to the east, he said, his tone light but suggestive. What rumor? Rita demanded, her hand resting firmly on the table. Blaine chuckled, his amusement only making her watch him more intently. Enough with the suspense. Tell me at once, she insisted. Marquis Carter has been married for over a decade, yet he has no heir, Blaine said calmly. Do the Marquis and his wife not get along? Rita asked, frowning in confusion. Indeed. From what I've gathered, the Marquis is said to have unique appetites. Unique appetites? Rita repeated, perplexed. Like Count Todd's strange desires or perhaps even homosexuality. Blaine smiled knowingly. No one can say for certain, but rumors suggest the Marchioness refuses to be with him, likely out of disgust. Rita's eyes narrowed. They say an enemy of my enemy is a friend. What fun it would be to join hands, she thought, her gaze darkening. Where can I find Lady Carter? Meeting her will be difficult. She rarely leaves her estate and only meets with a few close acquaintances, Rosalie Amber, for example. Rita's expression shifted, her brow lifting. Rosalie? She asked, folding her hands thoughtfully. Blaine chuckled. Yes, your friend. But she's also quite close with Lady Carter. A faint smile crept onto Rita's face. Of course. Friendships between women can transcend even age, she said, her tone light, though her mind raced. Good thing I never broke ties with Rosalie, she mused silently. Blaine leaned back, smirking. The Carters weren't always estranged. They were actually quite close as newlyweds. When did things change? Rita asked, leaning in. Around their second year of marriage. That year, Carter traveled east for business. 2 months later, the Marchioness followed him. But she left abruptly, within a week, and their relationship was never the same after. Rita gave a knowing smile. So she must have discovered something unpleasant about him. Blaine's grin widened. Very astute, my lady. He took her hand, pressing a kiss against her knuckles. Rita leaned forward and kissed his forehead in return. Thank you, my angel, she whispered. As Blaine basked in her attention, malice flickered through her thoughts. Whatever Carter's secret is, it will exceed my expectations, and become his undoing. A few days later, Rita sat in the garden, a tea table already set, her gaze drifting to the ticking clock beside her. She should be arriving soon, she thought. Just as the thought crossed her mind, the sound of carriage wheels broke the quiet. The carriage rolled into the estate, and out stepped her mother. Welcome back, madam. A warm bath is prepared, and I'll have someone take your things to your room, a maid greeted warmly. Lady Alberhart paused, spotting Rita in the garden. Ver, she called softly, drawing her daughter's gaze. Rita brightened, standing up. Welcome back, mother. she exclaimed cheerfully. "If I'd known you'd be home today, I would have taken you along to the shops," her mother replied with a smile. "Are you planning to stay out here? It's nearly sunset." Rita gave a small smile. "I was just thinking it's a bit lonesome drinking tea by myself. Would you join me, Mother?" she asked politely. Lady Alberhart chuckled, settling gracefully into the seat across from Rita. "Of course, my adorable little lady. You haven't changed a bit since you were a child." Rita poured tea for both of them, the porcelain clinking softly in the evening breeze. "Mother," Rita said quietly, her voice unusually soft. Her mother glanced at her, immediately sensing the shift in mood. "What is it, Ver? Is something wrong?" she asked, gently taking Rita's hand. "I'm your mother. You can tell me anything." Rita's cheerful expression faded, replaced by sadness. "Child, what's troubling you? I can help, but only if you tell me," her mother urged, her gaze warm with concern. Rita hesitated for a moment, her lips trembling before she finally spoke. "Mother, tell me truthfully. Do you and Father not want me anymore?" Tears welled in her eyes, spilling over as she looked down, her voice barely above a whisper. "Dear child, how could you say such a thing? Why wouldn't we want you?" her mother said, rising from her seat with concern. "You don't mean that. You're my daughter. You mean the world to me." She stepped closer, gently placing a hand on Rita's shoulder. Rita's voice trembled through her tears. "Father, he doesn't need me anymore, does he?" Her mother's face softened with worry. "What did your father say to you, my darling? Please, tell me the truth." "I'm so scared, Mother," Rita whispered, covering her eyes as tears flowed freely. "My poor child. I don't know what your father told you, but don't let it trouble you. I won't allow him to send you away." Her voice wavered, and tears welled in her own eyes. "You've always struggled with seasickness, and yet he talks of marrying you off to Richard, so far away. Sometimes I wonder if he's lost his mind," she tells Rita. Rita's expression flickered for a moment, her thoughts shifting. "So, he really plans to send me off to Richard," she thought bitterly. "Perhaps I should be grateful he didn't just decide to have me killed." But outwardly, she kept her smile behind her tears. Her mother cupped Rita's face, brushing away the tears with her thumb. "Child, if you don't want this marriage, I won't force it on you. I don't care for uniting with a middling family from Richard either. I'll do everything I can to protect you, my sweet girl." "Thank you, Mother. I'm so glad I still have you," Rita said, her tear-streaked smile making her mother's heart ache. Lady Alberhart hugged Rita tightly, her own tears spilling over. "Forgive me, my dear daughter," her mother whispered. "Your father has been through so much since our time in Tatum. I've never had the heart to oppose him, but now I see how much this has hurt you." Rita gently pulled away from the hug, her curiosity piqued. "Was Father really struggling that badly?" she asked, watching her mother wipe away the last of her tears. Lady Alberhart sighed deeply. "Yes, you must have noticed it too. Before Tatum, your father's face was smooth, not a wrinkle in sight. But the stress of forging new deals wore him down. He began taking out his frustrations on his subordinates." Rita frowned, puzzled. Taking out his anger? Did Father hit them? Her mother gave a weary shake of her head. "It would be a relief if only that were all. In fact, he even threw out Ian, your butler, Ian." Rita froze, stunned by the revelation. Memories of Ian flashed in her mind, how she had sent him to Tatum to find out about her father, relying on Yersha's spell to keep him on task. Yersha had warned her. The strange shift in the spell's liquid suggested Ian might no longer be alive. "I had assumed he was killed, but in the end, it was by my father's hand," Rita thought bitterly, her expression momentarily hardening. "Why did Father throw him out?" she asked, her voice tinged with worry. Lady Alberhart sighed. "He likely fired him. Your father told me it wasn't something for a lady to witness, so he banned me from watching. But from what I heard, he had the servants beat Ian." She shook her head, sadness creeping into her features. "I only hope Ian is well now, perhaps serving a new master." Rita stayed silent, her thoughts clouded with memories of Ian and Yersha's grim prediction. "So this is how it ended for him," she mused, her heart heavy. After a brief pause, Rita gave her mother a soft smile, lifting the teapot again. "It's been too long since we've had tea together like this. It's nice to share things with you, Mother." Lady Alberhart's face brightened. "It feels just like when you were a little girl," she said warmly. "How about we make it a habit?" Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 4, Rita proposed, grinning slightly. Her mother laughed softly. Very well. I'll have the kitchen prepare your favorite desserts for each tea, Rita said, a playful glint in her eye. And there will be some very delicious surprises, Rita thought mischievously, smirking as she poured more tea. A few days later, Rita arrived at the administrative building. As her carriage rolled to a stop, Prince Van Brandt stood at the entrance, waiting to receive her. When she stepped out, his cheeks flushed bright red. Rita smiled, noticing his dazed expression. Aren't you going to escort me? She teased, leaning in slightly. The prince's blush deepened. Ah, of course. This way, he said hurriedly, offering his arm. Rita took it gracefully, her movements smooth and deliberate. As they walked toward the entrance, Prince Brandt glanced down, his gaze lingering on her bandaged wrist. He adjusted his grip slightly, now holding her hand more carefully, as if it were delicate glass. After a moment of silence, Rita turned her head toward him. You still haven't told me who I'm meeting, she said with calm curiosity. The prince hesitated, glancing at her sidelong before answering. His name is Avalanche de Rio Hordias, he said carefully. He is the second prince of Richard. Pardon? A prince? Rita asked, her voice tinged with surprise. He's a very important guest. Forgive me for telling you so late, Prince Brandt replied. Rita's thoughts raced. I had no idea the guest would be such a high-ranking noble. He must be quite frustrated with how things are handled in Osland to come here. Prince Brandt gently opened the door, gesturing for her to enter first. After you, he said. As they walked inside, they approached the waiting guest. Prince Avalanche sat up, his gaze shifting toward them. Upon seeing Rita, his face flushed. He reminds me of a rabbit, she noted inwardly. Prince Brandt stepped forward. This is the young noblewoman I mentioned, he introduced her to Prince Avalanche. A pleasure to meet you, Lady Verta. I am Prince Avalanche of Richard, he said, offering a polite bow. It's an honor to meet you, Prince Avalanche. My name is Count Alberhart, Rita replied with a smile as they both took their seats at the table. In front of them lay a map. You said you've discovered where Marquis Carter is manufacturing gunpowder, yes? Prince Avalanche asked, prompting a nod from Prince Brandt. Carter's research center is located here, Prince Brandt said, pointing at a spot on the map. I believe this is where his associates use magical equipment to illegally manufacture gunpowder. According to my investigation, there are supply wagons that travel in and out on an irregular basis. I suspect he smuggles out the gunpowder in these wagons, he explained. What if we ambush the wagons while they're transporting the gunpowder? That would give us concrete proof, Prince Avalanche suggested eagerly. Prince Brandt's expression turned serious. The research center is in a tricky spot. The wagons travel on a steep and narrow canyon road, and the center itself is surrounded by boulders. What if we attacked, prepared for a fight? Prince Avalanche proposed. Without the right justification, that could lead to political trouble, Prince Brandt replied, deep in thought. I see, Prince Avalanche exhaled, understanding the implications. If the crown recklessly pursues an elite noble family, the other nobles will not stand for it. That's why I've taken no action and simply observed, despite having intel, Prince Brandt said. No need to worry, Prince Avalanche said, reassuring him. This is why I've traveled all the way to Osland. I will do everything in my power to create a diversion for the Marquis, allowing you to seize the opportunity to attack the research center. As the two princes discussed strategy, Rita, who had been quietly listening, finally spoke up. May I offer a suggestion? I know of a method that could certainly distract the Marquis, she said, drawing their attention. Here, Rita said, pointing to a well-known location on the map. Shine Bar? Prince Brandt asked, sounding puzzled. Yes, it's the center of Osland's eastern region. Once a year, an officer is dispatched there to inspect the area, she explained. That's correct. And as you probably know, the officer dispatched there is always, Prince Brandt began. Marquis Proud Carter. Rita completed his thought with a smile. Or should we refer to him as Officer Carter? Prince Brandt shook his head. No, he has been the supervising officer since his youth. Sending someone whose loyalty is not to the crown to oversee such a distant region makes me uneasy. But dismissing someone so competent raises questions, so I've merely kept an eye on him. Are you aware that the Marquis and Lady Carter are not on good terms? Rita asked, her smile widening. I've heard rumors, he replied, his expression turning serious. And what if the source of their marital troubles lies in Shinebar? She proposed, startling him. Perchance, do you know something we don't, Lady Verta? Prince Avalanche inquired calmly. I'm not sure of the details, but I do know it's something scandalous. Scandalous enough for a newlywed wife to be repulsed by her husband, she said coldly. Your Highness, I'm not well versed in the law, but don't senior officials face severe penalties for being sexually promiscuous or involved in sex crimes? Such actions would disgrace the crown. I suppose that means you'd like to investigate the Marquis's activities in the East, Prince Avalanche said, a smile creeping onto his face. Indeed. But stopping there would be a waste, she added, a thoughtful expression on her face. Are you suggesting we use Carter's business trip to the Eastern region as a decoy? Prince Brant asked, his curiosity piqued. Yes. If we begin investigating Shinebar, the Marquis will be preoccupied with hiding his indiscretions. While he's distracted in the East, that's when we strike at the research center, she said, a determined look on her face. A diversion tactic with a time gap. Impressive, Prince Avalanche commented calmly. Prince Brant clenched his fist, sensing the familiarity in Avalanche's demeanor toward Rita. I shall accompany Lady Verta to the Eastern region, Prince Avalanche declared suddenly, drawing Prince Brant's attention. Pardon? Prince Brant replied, barely concealing his displeasure. Are you sure? Prince Brant asked, his voice tight with tension. His gaze lingered on Rita, who met him with a neutral expression. There's no other option, he thought, resigned. He's here to help us catch Proud Carter, after all. Brant exhaled, bowing his head slightly as if surrendering to his own decision. He clenched his fist gently before speaking. Very well. Let's decide on a date soon. Splendid. Rita's mood brightened. I'll start preparing to travel right away. You're even sharper than I expected, Lady Verta, Prince Avalanche added, his face flushing. Not only are you beautiful, but your mind is remarkable, a rare treasure. You flatter me, Rita replied with a light laugh. Avalanche's gaze softened. Truthfully, it took me a long time to decide whether to come to Osland. This place, it carries painful memories, he admitted. His voice lowered as a distant memory surfaced, searching desperately for his sister, Helena, tears running down his face as he called her name. But I'm glad I found the courage to return, Avalanche continued, meeting Rita's eyes. If I hadn't, I wouldn't have met you. He rose from his seat and took a step closer to her. May I see your hand? He asked gently. Rita hesitated, her thoughts swirling. Is he going to kiss it? But she extended her bandaged wrist toward him. Avalanche cradled her hand carefully, closing his eyes for a moment. A soft glow emerged from her arm, and Rita stared, stunned. With quiet precision, Avalanche unwrapped the bandage, revealing smooth, unblemished skin beneath. How? Rita whispered in disbelief. Holy power, Avalanche said softly. It's a rare gift among the royal family of Richard. Some of us are born with it, though it's nothing extraordinary. To me, it's a miracle, Rita murmured, her face warming. Thank you, Prince Avalanche. He gave her a gentle smile, his own face coloring slightly. Meanwhile, Prince Brant sat silently, doubt settling over him. Have I summoned the wrong ally? After their meeting, Rita made her way toward her carriage, a quiet confidence in her step. Could matters be going any smoother? She mused. I like Prince Avalanche. This is just the beginning, but things are looking bright. Her calm stride faltered slightly as she rounded a corner, and spotted a familiar figure waiting for her. Of course. The universe demands balance. If one thing goes well, another must surely go wrong. The warmth in her expression faded, replaced by a composed smile. Standing before her, arms folded and a smirk playing on his lips, was Proud Carter. It's been a long time, Lady Alberhart, he said smoothly, his voice carrying an easy charm. Marquis Carter. Rita bowed gracefully, her lips curving into a pleasant smile. I trust you've been well? It's an honor to see you again. He gave a low chuckle. It really has been too long. What a pleasant coincidence, crossing paths like this. He took a step closer, stretching out his hand. Given the occasion, may I escort you to your carriage? Or do you prefer to walk alone? Rita studied him for a brief moment, then let out a light smile. Of course not. I always welcome the company of a gentleman like yourself. She rested her hand on his offered arm, and together they strolled toward the waiting carriage. As they walked in step, Carter's gaze darkened, though his polite demeanor never wavered. This girl has been quite the thorn in my side lately. Thanks to her, I've lost 2 subordinates. Jean Lawrence was murdered, and Nathan was exiled to Tatum while I was away. He glanced at her from the corner of his eye, his thoughts coiling with resentment. Rita Alberhart, you've cost me dearly. But not for much longer. Who are you meeting today, Lady Verta? I heard you resigned from the administration a few weeks ago, Marquis Carter asked with a polite smile. Interesting. Instead of asking why I was meeting someone, he wants to know who. He must have some idea already, Rita mused. Prince Van Brandt introduced me to a Prince of Richard, she said aloud, returning his smile. Do you know Prince Avalanche? I see. Carter's expression didn't shift, but there was a trace of thoughtfulness in his tone. He visited Osland once, 20 years ago. Do you know why Prince Avalanche would suddenly return? Of course, Rita replied lightly. You do? He asked, halting his steps, his gaze sharpening. Oh, Marquis Carter, what a wicked sense of humor, Rita giggled, her cheeks faintly flushed. Lady Verta, Carter said evenly, gentlemen my age have little patience for jokes. I would appreciate a clear answer. Why is a Prince of Richard here in Osland? His tone turned cold, and his eyes locked on hers with a piercing stare. Rita fell silent for a moment, then gave a faint smile. Why, to meet me, of course. After all, I'm approaching the age where marriage must be considered. And Prince Avalanche happens to be unmarried. His Highness was kind enough to make a personal introduction. Strange, Carter muttered, clenching his fist. I was under the impression you had promised yourself to Nathan. Or was that not true? You are more traditional than I thought, Marquis Carter, Rita said smoothly, still smiling. It would be foolish to promise everything to just one man, don't you think? Nathan Hector seemed certain about your relationship. A cautious man like him wouldn't be easily convinced without reason, Carter said as they resumed walking. Oh my, Rita murmured with a playful lilt, to me, we were simply getting to know each other. How strange. Why do men always leap to conclusions? All I did was smile at him a few times. A dark smile flickered across her lips. What am I doing here with this foolish girl? Carter thought bitterly, suppressing his irritation. Come to think of it, Rita continued casually, you were away on business for quite some time. You went east, didn't you? Where exactly? She glanced at him slyly. Have you been to Shine Bar? Carter flinched, though he masked it quickly. I was thinking of taking a holiday there, Rita added with a hint of amusement as she caught his reaction. His expression grew cold. I've suspected it for a while now. She's a wretched child, he thought grimly. But Count Alberhart will take care of her eventually, one way or another. Whether by marrying her off or getting rid of her entirely. Shine Bar is quite beautiful, Carter replied, forcing a pleasant smile. If you visit, you'll see exactly what I mean, Lady Verta. So that's how he's playing it, Rita thought, her smile never faltering. I see. Have you ever met the prince? His skin and hair are so pale and beautiful. I almost mistook him for an angel, Rita said with a soft giggle. He seemed to like me too. Imagine I could become the next princess of Richard. But I wonder, would life so far away suit me? What do you think? Should I think it over a bit more? She asked playfully, watching proud Carter's bored expression as they neared her carriage. I'll await good news, Carter replied dryly. But be mindful, entertaining men is all well and good, but don't keep your father waiting too long. He hasn't been looking well lately. Ah, but isn't that the fate of fathers with daughters like me? Rita smiled knowingly. Still, I'll keep it in mind. Thank you for the escort, Marquis Carter. I look forward to our next meeting. Carter released her hand with a polite nod and turned, making his way back toward the administrative building. Rita stood by her carriage, her gaze following him with a lingering, dark grin. The Count isn't looking well? Strange. He hasn't attended to any outside matters since his return from Tatum. Yet somehow, the Marquis has managed to meet with him in secret. What are they up to? She wondered, intrigued by the thought. Blaine traced his hand down her arm, his fingers lingering over smooth skin where old scars once lay. The marks are gone, he whispered, brushing the spot gently. Rita smiled, her eyes glinting. They've healed, she said softly, her grin laced with meaning. When dressed, Rita settled into a chair, her gaze drifting over the 2 bottles Blaine placed on the table. One contained a clear liquid, the other a deep red. The clear one is the poison, the red is the antidote, Blaine explained, gently brushing her hair as he stood behind her. The ratio is 1 part antidote to 2 parts poison. Detox is possible even with a small dose, but it must be administered within the first 100 hours. Any longer, and the poison may cause irreversible effects. Rita sat in silence, lost in thought. After a moment, she raised her head, her smile calm and deliberate. "Thank you, Blaine," she said softly. He leaned in for a kiss against the cheek. "This man understands me better than anyone else," Rita thought. "He knows who I really am, and even likes it." Her smile deepened, a flicker of amusement dancing in her eyes. Life can be insufferably long. But with this man, even if our love turns to ashes, even if we end up trying to kill each other someday, I think I'd enjoy that. As long as I win in the end. Rita's smile lingered, serene and dangerous. Rita sat comfortably in the carriage beside Rosalie Amber as they embarked on their journey. "It's been too long since we've gone on an outing together, Ver. We really should do this more often," Rosalie said cheerfully. "I'd love that, Rose." Rita smiled, then casually shifted the conversation. "By the way, the Marchioness, Grace Carter, what is she like?" "My aunt is quite delicate. It takes her time to open up to people," Rosalie replied thoughtfully. "Who isn't a little stiff at first?" Rita chuckled. "I'll be as pleasant as possible." Rosalie smiled warmly, nodding in approval. But inwardly, Rita considered how little information she had on Lady Carter. The Marchioness rarely left her estate, avoiding society altogether for years. The only useful thing Rita had uncovered was Lady Carter's devout piety. "I'm truly curious about her," Rita thought. When they reached the estate, Rosalie offered a small warning. "Auntie prefers being alone. Even during tea, she dismisses the servants, so you might have to drink cold tea." "That's quite all right. I don't mind cold tea," Rita replied with a smile as they approached the entrance. Her eyes swept over the estate. The Carters live in the capital, yet they maintain separate homes. Their relationship must be deeply strained, she mused. "There she is," Rosalie exclaimed, her face lighting up as she waved at her aunt, who stood waiting at the entrance. "Auntie, I've missed you." Rosalie ran forward and hugged the older woman tightly. "I've missed you too, Rose," Lady Carter replied, pulling back to examine her niece. "Have you been well? Are you eating enough? You look thinner than the last time I saw you." Rosalie laughed softly as Rita stood quietly, observing the interaction. "She's quite lovely, but her appearance is so plain, her clothes, her makeup. Everything about her seems understated. And this is proud Carter's wife?" Rita thought, puzzled. "Auntie, this is my friend, Count Alberhart, the one I told you about. Ver has been such a great help to me," Rosalie said brightly, introducing Rita. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Lady Carter." Rita smiled warmly, but the Marchioness's face remained stiff. "Welcome to my home. I hope you enjoy your time here," Lady Carter said softly before leading them inside. Soon, the three women were seated for tea. Rita's sharp eyes noted the absence of servants. This is quite a formal setting, except for the lack of attendants. She really does prefer solitude, Rita thought, lifting her teacup. "It's a good thing you ended your engagement with that man, Rose," Lady Carter said gently as they sipped their tea. "You're a lovely girl, but in marriage, compatibility matters most." Is she speaking from personal experience? Rita wondered, studying the older woman. "I'm truly happy for you, Rose. Now, you'll have the chance to find new love," Lady Carter added with a soft smile. Rita nibbled her cookie, feigning disinterest in the conversation between Rosalie and Lady Carter. "Auntie, ever since I became friends with Ver, I've started to value myself more than ever," Rosalie said, pulling Rita into the discussion. "Having a good friend is one of life's greatest blessings," Lady Carter replied softly. Rita set down her teacup and offered a polite smile. "I'm truly grateful for your hospitality, Lady Carter. That's why I brought along a small gift." She retrieved a gift box and placed it on the table. "You didn't have to," Lady Carter murmured. "It took me several hours to pick this out, my lady. Please, accept it," Rita said with a gentle smile. Lady Carter hesitated briefly, then carefully unwrapped the box. Her eyes widened as she examined the contents. "Is this a blessed object?" she asked, her voice full of surprise. "Yes. It was one of the gifts I received from Prince Avalanche during his visit to Osland. I asked his permission to pass it on to you," Rita said softly. Lady Carter's face brightened. something so precious. It's better in your hands than with a half-hearted believer like me, Rita replied smoothly. I shall cherish it, Lady Verta. Thank you. I'm simply glad it pleases you, Rita said warmly. Just as Lady Carter opened her mouth to speak further, Rita's hand brushed her teacup, sending it toppling over. The dark liquid spilled across the table and onto her dress. Are you all right? Rosalie cried, springing to her feet in alarm. I'll fetch a servant, just wait a moment, Rosalie said, rushing off before Rita could stop her. Thank you, Rose, Rita called after her, watching until she disappeared from view. Then, Rita shifted her gaze to Lady Carter, her expression cool and calculated. Lady Carter, Rita began, her tone steady but serious, I needed to speak with you alone. Forgive the abruptness. Lady Carter drew in a sharp breath, startled by the sudden shift in atmosphere. Rita rose gracefully from her chair. If it's all right with you, may I invite you for a walk? She extended her hand, her expression calm but unwavering. Lady Carter narrowed her eyes. What is this about? She asked, her tone edged with suspicion. Rita's lips curled into a smirk. Your husband, she whispered, leaning slightly closer. Lady Carter stiffened, visibly trembling. You can choose to speak or to listen, my lady, Rita continued, her voice low and deliberate. But if you refuse to follow me now, you'll regret it. And when that day comes, not even the goddess will be able to save you. Lady Carter's hands clenched in her lap. What do you want from me? She whispered, her voice trembling. A simple walk, my lady, Rita said, her smile returning, serene yet sharp. The garden is beautiful, Rita said as they strolled through it, her steps measured. Thank you, Lady Carter replied softly, trailing behind, her fists clenched. Rita's tone shifted sharply. How is your husband's gunpowder smuggling business going? The words stopped Lady Carter in her tracks. She froze, her eyes wide with disbelief. You must make quite a profit, especially since you're avoiding taxes, Rita added, turning to meet her panicked gaze. How did you find out? Lady Carter whispered, her voice unsteady. Are you the only one who knows? Or does everyone? Is that what's worrying you? Rita said with a smirk. I'm not going to tell you. Lady Carter's face paled. Why are you doing this? What do you want from me? She asked, trembling, her eyes welling with tears. Papaver somniferum. Such a pretty name, isn't it? Rita continued calmly, her gaze steady. The mention of the plant, the source of the poison used to kill the king, hit Lady Carter like a blow. Her legs gave way, and she sank to the ground, trembling. How did someone like me come across such scandalous information? Rita mused. I came to investigate on behalf of the crown. Lady Carter's breath hitched. The crown? The weight of those words seemed to crush her completely. They already have nearly everything they need to expose your husband's crimes. When the time comes, do you believe you'll be able to escape, my lady? Rita asked, her voice smooth but cutting. She knelt beside Lady Carter, her expression softening just slightly. Cooperate with me, and I can help you. If you give me what I need, I'll speak to the crown. You, and your family, can still walk away unscathed. Lady Carter stared at her, searching for an escape. What do you want to know? She whispered, defeated. 8 years ago, you traveled to Shinebar to see your husband, didn't you? Rita asked, her voice low. Tell me, what did you see there? That's all I need. Lady Carter hesitated, fear and exhaustion etched into her face. Is that all? I swear on my honor, Rita said, smiling faintly. But I need every detail. Lady Carter nodded reluctantly, her voice trembling as she began. I was a newlywed then. My husband had just left on a long business trip, and I missed him so much it hurt. She paused, memories flooding back. 8 years ago, I traveled to Shinebar to surprise him. When I arrived, he greeted me, coldly, as if I were nothing more than an inconvenience. Her voice faltered as she remembered. Dearest, I said with a smile when I saw him. You must be exhausted from traveling, he replied, his tone devoid of warmth. Rest. And then he turned and walked away. It had been 2 months since we'd last seen each other, Lady Carter whispered, bitterness creeping into her voice. Yet he didn't seem happy to see me. In fact, he looked uncomfortable. For the 2 weeks I stayed there, he never sought me out, Lady Carter said quietly. It saddened me, but I didn't think much of it. He only came to me once or twice a month, even at the best of times. She paused, collecting her thoughts. One night, I couldn't sleep. I wandered the mansion, restless. When I passed his quarters, I noticed light spilling through the crack beneath the door. His light is on again. He really should rest more at night. At this rate, his body won't hold up. The memory seemed fresh as she recounted it. I knocked gently. Are you there, dearest? Dearest. I called. But there was no response, and the door was locked. A flicker of anxiety crossed her face as she recalled that moment. I panicked. What if he'd collapsed from overwork? I didn't want to raise alarm without knowing for sure, so I ran to fetch the keys myself. She took a deep breath, continuing. I went to his bedroom on the first floor, thinking I might find him resting there. Proud? Proud, where are you? I called out, but the room was empty. Just as I was about to leave, I noticed the rug had been pushed to the side, revealing the entrance to a hidden stairway. I felt a strange certainty, she said, her voice dropping. He was down there. I grabbed a lamp and descended slowly. The space beneath the mansion was nothing like I expected. It was vast and maze-like, more beautiful than I could have imagined. But it was also disorienting, like a labyrinth. I thought perhaps he was lost or had fainted from exhaustion. I was determined to find him. She hesitated before continuing, the memory clearly weighing on her. I reached a room, its doors locked. Proud. I called softly, hoping he might answer. But then, her voice faltered, and she gripped her hands tightly. I heard something, a woman's moans, coming from a nearby room. She swallowed hard. I followed the sound, moving carefully toward the door where light slipped through the cracks. I peeked through, and saw them. Her voice trembled as she continued. Another woman was with my husband. He was smiling, completely lost in the moment. Lady Carter's eyes glistened as she spoke, her tone brittle. I had to cover my mouth to keep from crying out. The sight of him, so content, so at ease with her, shattered something inside me. That was the first time I saw my husband consumed by lust, Lady Carter confided to Rita. Just then, proud Carter had spotted his wife, his expression shifting from indulgence to tension as he locked eyes with her. Yet, even after noticing her, he remained entangled with the other woman. Rita's face reflected quiet shock at the revelation. At daybreak, I left Shinebar, Lady Carter continued. I had traveled all that way because I missed him, only to find him enjoying his young mistress. I was ashamed of myself. Rita extended a hand with gentle empathy. That must have been difficult for you, she said softly. Lady Carter accepted her hand and rose from the ground, the two continuing their walk in silence for a moment. A few months later, he came home, Lady Carter went on. He acted as if nothing had happened. I thought the weight of it all would kill me, but I couldn't bring myself to end the marriage. Still, things between us deteriorated. And when I found out he was poisoning the king. Her voice wavered. That was more than I could bear. Rita stopped and held her hands firmly. Don't worry. I'll speak to the crown. I'll make sure you and your family are shown mercy, she promised with a warm smile. Lady Carter gave a slight nod, her expression softening. Thank you, she whispered. Later, over tea time back at home, Rita recounted her conversation with Lady Carter to Blaine, sipping her tea with quiet thoughtfulness. What has you so deep in thought? Rita asked, noticing Blaine's silence. Isn't it fascinating? He mused. Even a man like proud Carter once loved someone. Do you mean his mistress? Rita asked, setting her teacup down into its saucer. But was she truly his mistress? You said he kept her in the basement. That sounds more like a prisoner than a lover, Blaine replied, raising a brow. Indeed. But Lady Carter called her a mistress. She must have seen some kind of affection between them, Rita said thoughtfully. Still, if a high-ranking official kidnapped, imprisoned, and abused a young girl while acting on behalf of the crown, the punishment would be severe. That depends entirely on who the girl is, Blaine pointed out with a small smile. If she's nobility, he'd face far worse consequences. And if she isn't, Rita added, a sly glint in her eye, shall I have her adopted? I'd call her my sister, just to see the look on Carter's face. Blaine chuckled softly. You really do exceed my expectations. After a moment, he shifted gears. And how is the plan with your father coming along? It's going smoothly, Rita said, a small smile playing on her lips. I've been using the incense to deliver the poison gradually. I can't poison him directly, it would draw too much attention. But this way. She trailed off, her eyes gleaming. In time, his health will decline. He won't last 2 more months. Blaine gave her a sideways glance, his expression shifting playfully. You didn't poison my cup, did you? He asked with a smirk. Oh, darling, why ever would I poison you? She whispered as she stood, gliding toward him. Rita perched herself on his lap and kissed him deeply. You've only been so good to me, she said with a smile. Blaine's expression softened.
Thank you for joining us on this incredible adventure. If you enjoyed what you watched, please consider liking, subscribing, and ringing that notification bell. Your comments mean the world to us and help us improve. The next episode promises even more excitement and unexpected twists, so stay tuned as we embark on this thrilling journey together. Keep the anticipation alive, and we'll catch you in the next episode.